Okay, so we're going to start off. This time talking a little bit about long-term strategy for New Hampshire, where it's at, where it's not, and also the energy portfolio, which is a really good way to look over time in terms of whether we're cleaning up different sectors and how we're approaching our policies in terms of how they fill in what our options are for base load and intermittence, I guess or renewables. When I look at that portfolio, when I first started paying attention to it was around 2000. So it's been, 21 years that I've been looking at that data. And we've had some really significant shifts in different sectors. We were looking to eliminate on baseload electric energy sector. We were trying to eliminate emissions there. And so we reduced our dependence on oil and coal. And so those sectors have shrunken, but they've been replaced.
But we still have the Bow coal plant, which needs
to do, but it's like a peaker plant, right? I mean, they don't use the dirty energy unless they need to fire it up for specific reasons. And that also is a strategy. To your point, we should be rolling off of that, and we should be figuring out how we're taking that plant out and replacing that energy. But what I was going to say is gas has come in as a major player. And interestingly enough, the gas industry decided to label themselves as, clean and natural, right? Natural gas. And so with just a couple of words to, a couple of adjectives that they threw into the mix there, they got to take one fossil fuel and replace it with another. And we are still at a point where we're holding back solar especially, but renewables in the state. So, and it seems to be by design. So that's my little lead in, and we can take it wherever you want to take it.
Yeah. I was going to say, one thing I think is important thinking about gas versus, supplement or replacing some of that oil and coal that has thankfully gone with more renewables is, gas isn't something that is native to New Hampshire. I guess it's not something that's produced locally. And so why we are making so much effort to allow something that's, not great carbon wise, and also, isn't doing anything really for the local economy. It's an interesting question to me. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, which of course brings us to net metering, right? I mean, we have been talking about and proposing bills and trying to get to net metering. This year marks 5 years. It's been 5 years of bipartisan efforts to increase net metering so we can have some homegrown renewable beyond 1 megawatt, and keeps getting vetoed. So, we have a bill this year that might actually turn into something with net metering. Will everyone be happy? No. Will it pass? To be determined. But I think that it's an interesting discussion to have about homegrown energy and at least allowing solar to move forward more than 1 megawatt, because that's really where we're seeing the strengths in our neighboring states, with more than 1 megawatt being produced and then being stored in large battery storage facilities to address peak times when you need more electric. So I feel like we've been trying, but we're still battling a couple of perhaps misconceptions about net metering and why it's a good idea to go more than 1 megawatt. And that's, that's the nature of politics, right?
And the complexity of energy is another reason why it can be delayed, because it can easily be, they can deflect the issue. We haven't figured out what it is we're solving for, right? Are we solving for emissions? Are we solving for the transition away from emitting? In other words, until you're able to articulate which goal you're moving toward, it's very hard for you to set up the steps to get there. And I feel like we are purposefully being kept in a place where we're unable to agree to those goals, even though they're as plain as the nose on our face. Like, we know what other people are doing, we know best practices, we know what matters, and it's going to be more expensive for us to ignore taking corrective action. And to Jackie's point about local and sustainable energy, that's kind of the movement that's going on now. And it does have to be managed, because from the ISO New England's perspective, when they see renewables coming online behind the meter, they don't have a lot of insight into those or management of those. And so there is a whole piece that needs to be managed to do it properly, but we're not even at the point where we're allowing it to occur. So we can't even have the conversations about how to do it strategically and well, because we can't even get agreement that it's helpful for us not to be able to have to import more fuels from out of state.
Yeah. I think also, just going back to that idea of, part of the role of government should be planning long-term and thinking long-term. That counts economically too. Like, we've heard a few times, like, it's going to be way more expensive to solve these problems down the line, and yet we still have these bills that are like, oh, this is gonna, save ratepayers like a couple dollars on their bill, and so we should do it because every little bit helps for folks. While I appreciate I appreciate the sentiment, very few people that I've talked to would say, yeah, it's worth it to me to get the $5 now so that I don't have to solve this, $1 million problem later. Yeah, that's just very short term thinking.
Penny wise, pound foolish, I think they used to call it back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. Penny wise, pound foolish. That's a much shorter way to say.
I wanted to jump on that because Concord, where I live, is, like many towns in New Hampshire, has committed to go to completely carbon neutral on electric by 2030. So here we are, it's 2021. They've got 9 years to figure out how to do that. On the municipal side, there's a plan to do a huge solar array at the sewer treatment plant. And they'd like to move forward. It would really help if the net metering cap could be lifted or removed so that can happen for the city. And certainly that would be a state goal to do that, to help Concord and other similarly situated municipalities who are trying to do the right thing for their own local energy. But we just seem to have a real difficult time reaching consensus on how, okay, if Concord does that, does that mean that other municipalities that haven't taken on doing a solar array for their own municipal use are suddenly going to pay more? And I really want to be super clear that that is an urban myth. It's not true.
That is a GOP myth.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, just because it's cheaper for Concord because they've committed to built solar panels, they've got reduced electric rates for 25 years because that's part of their infrastructure plan, doesn't mean that the rates for Bow and Hopkinton are going to go up. That's not what's going on here.
Not a zero-sum game, because
it's not more for me.
Utility rates are still the utility rates.
It's not pie. Right? It's not pie.
Right. It's not pie.
And I mean, if anything, more supply should make things cheaper, not more expensive.
Right. Exactly. That would
lower
be
demand.
Demand.
Right. Lower demand also will make things cheaper, and also managing peak will make things cheaper. So this idea that we can't even get in the game because a bunch of guys decided on an argument that's been refuted, it's kind of like trickle down economics. It's like, why are we still allowing these people to have the control?
Not like the data is not out there to show that this is not something that actually happened.
Well, we probably should wrap up because we're trying to keep them short, but this was great. This was fun. What are we going to talk about next time? Any ideas?
I think we could do a little bit more on current bills and
deep dive.
Deep dive on current bills.
Okay, cool.
Join us.
All right. Bye.